Welcome back, everyone, to this deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're getting into something really fascinating. It's this question of how understanding reality, like the deep down nature of the universe, how does that actually change your day-to-day life?
Right, does it stay theoretical or does it have practical implications? And we've got some interesting sources to dig into for this.
Yeah, we're looking at excerpts from a chapter called Living the Universal One, Practical Implications, plus a quote from Zoran and something they call a dragon trial. Sounds intense.
It does, yeah. But the core idea running through them is pretty profound.
Our goal, really, is to unpack how seeing reality as, well, fundamentally mental, this interconnected energy, always moving, dynamic, impermanent, isn't just some philosophical idea.
The sources argue it changes everything. If you let it sink in, that is. It shifts how you perceive, how you interact, everything from the inside out.
So maybe get ready to look at your own life through a potentially very different lens today.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the foundation from these sources. The basic picture painted is the universe as the thought of a universal one, made visible
Made visible how?
through cosmic rhythm and what the source calls conditioned light, which is essentially, the stuff we perceive as reality.
And we've touched on this before, how similar ideas pop up elsewhere.
Exactly. Echoes in Vedanta with Maya and Brahman, Buddhist concepts like sunyata emptiness and anicca impermanence.
And Taoism too, right? The Tao, yin-yang, qi, prana, all that energy flow stuff.
Precisely. So reality is presented as mind, as an idea in motion, energy moving in cycles.
Where solid objects are just temporary patterns.
And impermanence is the rule, not the exception. The brain's like a receiver in this view.
Okay, a receiver.
And thoughts are actual forces, a dynamic energy.
Right. So if that's the underlying reality, the big question the source poses is, what does this mean for you, for your actual life?
Does it just stay an interesting concept you ponder? Or does it fundamentally change how you handle, say, challenges, or how you create things, how you relate to people, how you just exist?
And the source is pretty direct about it. It says, it changes everything if you let it truly sink into your bones. Strong words.
Very.
Whoa.
So where do we start seeing these changes? The first area explored is creativity.
Ah, okay. This is interesting because if creation isn't like a one-off Big Bang deal, but the universe is always creating,
The universal one's thought constantly expressing itself.
then where does my creativity fit in? Am I just, making stuff up?
Well, the sources argue it's much deeper than that. Your creativity isn't just some personal hobby or skill. It's framed as your consciousness, your unique spark of that universal mind aligning with this cosmic creative impulse.
So it's participation.
Exactly. Participating in what they call the Leela, the divine play of manifestation.
Yeah.
You're part of the universe creating itself.
Wow. That definitely elevates things. So writing an email, designing a spreadsheet, cooking dinner, it could all be seen as?
As a sacred connection, in a way. A connection with the source. Because think about it. Your thoughts, your intentions, those little sparks of imagination,
Yeah.
they aren't just passive ideas in your head. They're described as dynamic energies, vibrations,
Vibrations that do what?
that seek to pattern that conditioned light we mentioned, to bring new forms, new harmonies into being, just like on a cosmic scale, thought patterns galaxies.
So we're not just watching the show.
Not at all. We're participants,
Yeah.
even co-creators, conscious co-creators.
Oh, wait, that's a big shift. So if creativity is aligning with the flow,
Yeah.
what about the opposite? What about when things feel blocked or painful? What about suffering?
Yeah, the sources tackle that directly. They connect it back to Russell's view sometimes of disease being like a disruption of harmony, an imbalance in the rhythm.
Right, like a discordant note in the music.
Exactly. And extending that, the idea proposed is that a lot of human suffering comes from, well, resisting the natural flow of the universe
Resisting how?
by clinging to illusions, like the illusion that things are permanent when the reality is constant change, Annika.
Or clinging to the idea of a totally separate, fixed self-anatta when reality is fundamentally interconnected.
It's like demanding that this dynamic flowing energy, prana, chi, whatever you call it, should behave like something static and solid and separate.
And that friction, that resistance, is the source of the pain.
That's the perspective, yeah. Suffering seen as blockages, stagnation, disharmony in your energetic flow, caused by maybe discordant thoughts or emotions or actions that go against the grain, against the way or karma.
So understanding this, it shifts suffering from something to be blamed or despaired over,
Because seeing it as a signal, like a dashboard warning light.
a signal of imbalance.
Exactly. An invitation to figure out where you're out of sync and realign, restore the harmony, becomes a kind of teacher.
Which leads naturally into personal growth then.
Okay.
Because if I'm not this fixed, separate thing, if I'm more like a process, a temporary pattern,
A wave in the ocean of the universal one, as some might say.
then growth isn't about bolting on new features or becoming someone totally different.
Right. The sources suggest growth is more about aligning more fully with your true nature, which is already connected to the source, to that cosmic rhythm, to the universal mind.
That's like uncovering or tuning.
Yeah, both are good analogies.
Okay.
Refining your own vibration, you could say. Clearing out the energetic static, the blockages. Shedding the illusions of separation and permanence that cause the suffering and kind of obscure your potential.
So I become a conscious participant in my own unfolding.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
Like a seed. A seed doesn't force itself to become a flower. It aligns with conditions, follows its innate pattern, and unfolds.
Yeah.
You're consciously participating in your unfolding, guided by understanding these deeper principles.
Okay. Now, how does this view change our relationship with the planet, the natural world?
Oh, profoundly. Earth isn't just seen as a lump of rock with resources we use.
Not just a stage for human drama.
No. It's described as a living, breathing entity itself. A complex system of rhythms, energies. A conscious form within that larger universal one.
So we're not just on the Earth.
We're part of its being,
Mm.
participating in its cycles, breathing its air, cycling its water, part of its energetic web.
Which means harming the planet.
Is harming yourself. Disrupting the ecosystem is disrupting the larger rhythm that you are intrinsically part of. It's like attacking your own body in a way.
So aligning with the planet's rhythms becomes important, like day-night, seasons.
Absolutely. Respecting those cycles, understanding the tides, maybe even, as the source mentions, having reverence for the energetic quality of places, nature spirits in some traditions, that becomes key.
Not just for ecological balance out there.
But for your personal well-being, you're aligning your own energy field with the larger planetary body of the universal one. It's all interconnected.
That makes sense. And it brings us to a really practical point the sources emphasize, aligning our personal rhythms with these bigger universal ones.
Yes. Think about all the rhythms within us, our breath, our heartbeat,
Sleep-wake cycles, circadian rhythm.
hunger cues, hormonal cycles, even life cycles,
Yeah.
Childhood, adulthood, old age, cycles of activity and rest, growth and reflection.
And then zoom out, planetary cycles.
Day and night, obviously.
Hmm.
Moon phases, the seasons rolling by, ocean tides.
And then even bigger, cosmic cycles.
Yeah, planetary movements, the life cycles of stars, even galactic rotations. Huge, vast rhythms.
So the suggestion is we should live more in tune with these instead of fighting them.
Exactly. Rather than constantly imposing artificial schedules, pushing relentlessly in a straight line, ignoring our body's need for rest or the seasonal energy shifts.
Living with the rhythm restores balance.
That's the idea. It enhances vitality, reduces stress, eases suffering, brings a sense of peace, belonging.
Finding your place in the cosmic dance.
Nicely put. Moving with the music, letting the universal flow carry you instead of constantly swimming upstream.
Okay, this leads to perhaps the most mind-bending implication, conscious co-creation.
Right. If reality is fundamentally mental, an idea in motion.
If the universe itself is conscious.
And your consciousness is a spark, a localized point of that universal mind.
Wow. The potential seems huge.
It does, because your thoughts, your intentions, your beliefs, where you focus your awareness, they aren't just internal noise.
They're the forces we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Dynamic energies, vibrations, interacting with that underlying field of potentiality.
The vibrant sea or 0 point you mentioned.
The source from which form emerges. Now, this doesn't mean you're the only creator, like snapping your fingers and making things appear.
Right. It's not simplistic. You create your own reality in that sense.
No, it's framed more as being a conscious participant, a node in the network of creation.
So how does that participation work?
By aligning your inner world thoughts, intentions, emotions, and then your actions with those fundamental cosmic laws or principles.
Like harmony, balance, rhythm.
Giving and regiving, love, truth, principles that seem inherent in the structure of this conscious universe.
And doing that allows you to consciously influence with what?
The patterns of energy, primarily within yourself, your health, your state of being, but potentially in subtle ways influencing the world around you too.
So it's not just thinking positive thoughts and hoping for the best.
No, it's deeper. It's about understanding the actual creative mechanism.
Mm.
Mind expressing as patterned energy, and then learning to work with that mechanism consciously, responsibly.
Like learning the rules of the game.
Yeah, or learning how to sculpt with the universal clay of light and energy, guided by the natural rhythms and principles of the cosmos. It implies a lot of agency
Hmm.
and responsibility.
There's a line in the source material, something about metaphors biting. Scholars call worms metaphors, but metaphors bite. And maybe the bite of this whole living the universal one perspective is this realization.
I think that's exactly it. That exhilarating, maybe slightly terrifying awareness that you're way more powerful, way more connected, and way more responsible for the reality you experience
Both inside you and the one we all share.
than we usually imagine in our standard materialist, separate self view of the world.
So to really live this perspective, it means embracing that connection, living consciously.
Living rhythmically, creatively, trying to stay in harmony with that cosmic dance.
It's a fundamental shift, isn't it? From feeling like this small, isolated speck.
To recognizing yourself as a vital, interconnected, conscious part of a living, breathing, thinking universe.
That's a path of huge potential growth.
Definitely. Deep connection, shedding illusions, and stepping into that role of conscious participation in the grand divine play, as the sources put it.
Which brings us to that Zoran quote. It fits perfectly here.
It really does. Want to share it?
Yeah, you are not a passenger in the universe, little human, merely observing the ride. You are a note in its song, a step in its dance, a thought in its boundless mind. Live accordingly and feel the rhythm carry you.
It just captures it, doesn't it? That shift from passive observer to active participant, feeling the rhythm carry you.
And the sources don't just leave us with these big ideas, they offer something practical, this dragon trial.
Right, a way to start applying this immediately. Not just thinking about it, but doing something.
So what's the challenge? The trial.
It's pretty straightforward, actually.
Yeah.
You choose one area in your life right now where things feel stuck or out of balance. Maybe there's conflict or suffering.
Could be physical, emotional, mental,
Oh,
naturalization.
Anything, yeah. Just pick one thing that feels off kilter.
Okay, then what?
Then you look at it through this lens we've been discussing. Ask yourself, where's the rhythm disrupted here?
Where's the imbalance, like in giving and receiving, or yin and yang?
Exactly. Or where am I resisting the natural flow? Where am I clinging too tightly to some fixed idea of how things have to be, ignoring the reality of change, of impermanence?
So you diagnose the imbalance using these principles.
And then the trial asks you to identify one small conscious action you can take, today, right now even.
An action to do what?
To introduce a little more rhythm or balance or flow back into that specific situation. Something that deliberately aligns you, even slightly, with these universal principles.
Okay, like what kind of action? Give us some examples.
The source gives really simple ones. It could be literally just taking a few deep rhythmic breaths, reestablishing that basic physical rhythm inside you.
Simple, but can be powerful.
Or consciously noticing and releasing physical tension you're holding related to that stuck situation, just letting go.
Okay. Or maybe on the mental level?
Yeah, deliberately choosing to focus on a thought that feels more harmonious, more aligned with balance or flow, rather than dwelling on the thought pattern that's causing the distress or friction.
So it's about making a small conscious shift towards harmony.
Exactly. Starting where you are with something tangible in your immediate experience, applying the principles, not just thinking about them.
That makes these big ideas feel much more accessible, actionable.
That seems to be the point of the trial.
So this whole deep dive, it really maps out a profound potential shift in perspective.
Absolutely. Moving away from feeling separate and powerless towards a sense of active, interconnected participation in the universe that's alive and conscious.
And maybe that leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty big thought to chew on.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if your consciousness really is a spark of a universal mind, and if your thoughts really are dynamic energies that shape reality, then what is the full extent of your responsibility? For the reality you experience inside yourself, sure, but also for the world you share.
That is a deep one. Definitely something to consider as you go about your day.